The memory comes to me in fragments, like shattered glass catching sunlight, brilliant, painful, incomplete. I was 4 years old when the storm tore my world apart, quite literally. One moment I was clutching my father, Richard Miller's strong hand, as we walked through the crowded festival grounds, my mother Elizabeth's melodic laugh dancing on the wind behind us. The next moment, chaos erupted like a living nightmare. The hurricane struck without warning, transforming the cheerful summer fair into a battlefield of flying debris and screaming people. Rain lashed down in torrents, and the world became a blur of terror and confusion. In that maelstrom of panic, my small fingers slipped from my father's grasp. I remember calling out, my voice swallowed by the howling wind, reaching desperately through the darkness for hands that were no longer there. When the storm finally passed, I found myself alone, shivering and sobbing in a ditch beside a country road. That's where David Johnson found me, a weathered man with calloused hands and eyes that held the kind of gentleness born from hardship. He scooped me up like a broken bird, whispering words of comfort and a voice rough with emotion. "It's all right, little one," he murmured, his coat smelling of honest work and fading cologne. "You're safe now." The Johnson home was nothing like the spacious mansion I'd known for my brief 4 years of life. It was a modest wooden house where the floorboards creaked with every step, where Maria Johnson mended clothes by lamplight, and where love was measured not in material abundance, but in the warmth of shared meals and bedtime stories told by firelight. Maria, with her flour-dusted apron and eyes like morning coffee, became the mother who dried my tears and taught me to find beauty in simple things. David, whose shoulders bore the weight of supporting a family on a laborer's wages, never once made me feel like a burden. And Ethan, dear Ethan, only 2 years older than me, appointed himself my protector, my companion, my brother in every way that mattered. As months turned to years, the memories of my birth parents faded like watercolors in rain. Sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, fragments would surface, the scent of expensive perfume, the rustle of silk dresses, and the echo of cultured voices discussing matters I couldn't understand. But these seemed like dreams now, insubstantial as morning mist against the solid reality of my life with the Johnsons. Yet deep in my heart, a question grew like a seed in darkness. Who was I really? The girl who belonged in drawing rooms and private schools, or the one who found joy in helping Maria hang laundry on the line, who fell asleep to the sound of David's gentle snoring through thin walls? The years taught me that poverty could not diminish the richness of love, but they also awakened in me a fierce hunger for knowledge. While other children played, I devoured every book I could find, studying by candlelight when the electricity was cut off, scribbling homework on the backs of old receipts when we couldn't afford proper paper. My academic achievements became a beacon of hope, not just for me, but for the entire community. Local newspapers began calling me the miracle student, the girl who proves that circumstances cannot defeat determination. Each article featured a photograph of me, smiling beside the family that had become my anchor, my everything. I should have been proud. I was proud. But with each accolade, each scholarship offer, each interview, a strange unease grew in my chest. The attention felt both deserved and undeserved. as if I were accepting praise for a performance rather than for my authentic self. It was on a Tuesday morning in March when everything changed. I was at school, presenting my science project on renewable energy, when the principal walked into the classroom with a strange expression on her face. Behind her stood two people who made my blood turn to ice water in my veins. The woman had my eyes, the same unusual shade of green gold that I'd always thought made me special. The man had my stubborn chin, my way of tilting his head when concentrating. They stood there in expensive clothes that spoke of a world I'd forgotten, their faces painted with hope and desperation, and something that looked dangerously like recognition. "Sophia," the woman whispered, and the name fell from her lips like a prayer, like a wound reopening. My legs nearly gave out. No one had called me Sophia in 14 years. To the Johnsons, to everyone who mattered, I was Sophie. But hearing my birth name spoken in that achingly familiar voice unlocked doors in my memory I'd thought sealed forever. The DNA test was a formality. We all knew the truth before the results came back. I was Sophia Miller, the daughter who had vanished in a storm, leaving behind parents who had spent 14 years searching, grieving, hoping, never giving up. The meeting between both families took place in the Johnsons' small living room, a space that suddenly felt microscopic under the weight of such enormous emotions. Richard and Elizabeth Miller sat on our threadbare couch like exotic birds in a humble nest, their grief and joy radiating in equal measure. David and Maria huddled together in their worn armchairs, their faces reflecting the bewilderment of people watching their world shift on its axis. And I sat between them all, feeling like a bridge stretched too far, threatening to snap. "We looked everywhere," Elizabeth said, her voice breaking. "Every day for 14 years. We hired investigators. We never moved from our house in case you came back. She couldn't continue, dissolving into tears that seemed to fall from the depths of her soul. Richard's jaw worked silently, his businessman's composure cracking like ice in spring. "We should have held on tighter," he said finally. "We should have protected you better." The guilt in his voice was a living thing, and it tore at my heart. But then I looked at David, at Maria, at Ethan, and saw their own anguish. They were facing the possibility of losing the daughter and sister they'd raised, loved, sacrificed for. "She's our Sophie," Maria said quietly, her hands trembling as she smoothed her apron. "We may not have given birth to her, but we raised her. We love her. We know. And we're so grateful. But she's our Sophia too, our baby girl." The room fell silent, except for the sound of too many hearts breaking at once. I felt the crushing weight of having to choose between two families, two versions of myself, two different meanings of love. How could I honor the parents who gave me life without betraying the parents who gave me everything else? How could I embrace my true identity without destroying the only identity I'd ever known? That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was drowning in expectations and love and impossible choices. Outside, the wind picked up, and for a moment, I was 4 years old again, lost in a storm that would reshape the landscape of my life forever. The solution came not from me, but from the most unexpected source. It was Elizabeth Miller who spoke first at our second meeting, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "Maria," she said, addressing my adoptive mother directly, "you saved our daughter's life. More than that, you gave her love, you gave her values, you gave her the strength to become this incredible young woman. We can never repay that debt." Richard nodded, his throat working with emotion. "We've lost 14 years with her, but that's not your fault. That's not anyone's fault. What matters now is what's best for Sophia." I expected him to follow with a demand, a claim to reclaim what was theirs by right of blood. Instead, he surprised us all. "We want to be part of her life," he continued, "but we don't want to tear her away from the family that raised her. If you'll allow it, we'd like to become extended family." The words hung in the air like a lifeline thrown across turbulent waters. David cleared his throat, his laborer's hands twisting together. "What exactly are you proposing?" "Partnership," Elizabeth said simply. "Richard and I have been blessed financially, but we missed out on the blessing of raising our daughter. You gave her everything that mattered: love, character, resilience. Perhaps we can give something back to the family that saved her." What followed was the most extraordinary conversation of my life. My birth parents offered to help David start his own construction business, something he'd dreamed of for years but never had the capital to pursue. They wanted to fund Ethan's education, to ensure Maria could stop working herself to exhaustion. Not as charity, but as family helping family. "We don't want to buy our way into her life," Richard said carefully. "We want to earn our place in it." I watched these 4 adults, my parents, all of them, negotiate the terms of loving me, and I felt something shift inside my chest. The terrible tension that had been tearing me apart began to ease, replaced by something I'd never experienced before: the sense of belonging to something larger than any single family unit. "You know," I said, my voice small in the emotion-charged room, "maybe I don't have to choose." 4 faces turned to me with identical expressions of hope. "I am Sophie Johnson. I'm also Sophia Miller. I'm the girl who learned to find joy in simple things, and I'm the girl who was born into privilege. I'm the daughter who was raised by love, and the daughter who was grieved for by love. Maybe I can be both." Elizabeth rose from the couch and with tentative steps approached Maria. Could I hug you, the woman who mothered my daughter when I couldn't?" What happened next will remain etched in my memory forever. 2 mothers from 2 completely different worlds embraced in the middle of that small living room, crying tears that were part gratitude, part grief, part overwhelming love. David and Richard, both strong men in their own ways, found themselves wiping their eyes and shaking hands that somehow turned into an awkward but heartfelt hug. And Ethan, my brother, my protector, my constant companion, looked at me with that crooked smile that had gotten us both out of trouble countless times. "So, does this mean we're rich now?" And the tension shattered into laughter, the kind that bubbles up from relief and joy and the simple human need to find light in the darkness. 6 months later, I stood in the doorway of our new house. Not the mansion my birth parents owned, but a comfortable home large enough for all of us. The Johnsons had their own wing, the Millers had theirs, and in the middle was a common area where we gathered for meals, for conversations, for the 1,000 small moments that make a family. David's construction business was thriving, built on the foundation of his natural skill and backed by Richard's business acumen. Maria had started a small bakery, her recipes finally reaching beyond our kitchen table. Ethan was preparing for college, his acceptance letter to engineering school pinned proudly to the refrigerator. And I was simply, completely, joyfully myself. Sophia Miller Johnson, a bridge between 2 worlds, living proof that family is not defined by the circumstances of birth or the accident of blood, but by the choice to love, to sacrifice, to hold on even when storms threaten to tear us apart. Sometimes, late at night, I still remember that 4-year-old girl lost in the storm, but now I understand that the storm didn't destroy my family. It expanded it, scattered the seeds of love across a wider ground, created room for more hearts than I ever thought possible. Standing there in the doorway, watching Richard teach David how to read financial reports, while Elizabeth and Maria planned the week's menus, watching Ethan challenge everyone to a board game he was bound to lose, I realized that some bridges are not meant to connect two separate shores, but to create a new place entirely, a place where love multiplies instead of divides, where belonging means not having to choose, but being chosen completely and unconditionally by everyone who matters. The storm had ended long ago. This was what came after. Not just survival, but abundance. Not just reunion, but transformation. Not just family, but family squared. Love multiplied, hearts linked across every divide that had once seemed insurmountable. I was home at last. All of me. In all the places I belonged.